Hello everyone, how are we enjoying DEF CON? Yeah, so last day, glad that you're all here. I have with me Sam and Tom, I'm Marius, and we are here to talk about getting banned without actually cheating. So this game aims as kind of showcasing a little bit what's going on in the cheat and anti-cheat world by a fun exploration of the topic. So first of all, let's look into why are we actually interested in getting banned without cheating, right? Getting banned should be easy. We just buy some cheats and then, like all the other cool kids on the block, we would be banned as well. Now, we have seen on Twitch, we really want to get banned, but we are all working in a university, we are academics, we don't have money, we cannot afford to buy cheats. So as a result, we look into ways to just go for getting banned without cheating, and also a little bit later in the talk, how we can get other people banned on our behalf. So who are we that we're here and talking? We have Sam over here, who is currently a PhD student with us at the University of Birmingham. He works a lot in his research in man-at-the-end attacks and reverse engineering. So looking into anti-cheats and cheats is right down his alley. He also developed some game for our undergrad courses, and these games can only be solved by actively being hacked. So not cheating, but hacking. So a little bit of game dev experience. Tom is a full professor at our university. He's teaching game hacking since years and years and years to our different students, including Sam. And besides looking at that, he also hacked small little payment providers like Apple Pay, Visa, Square, Bank of America, like the things you just look at. I'm Marius, I'm working as a system prof at the same uni. I do a lot of like securing smartphones, basement hacking, low-level reverse engineering, these kind of stuff. Recently I also looked into the RP2350, the Pico 2. So that's us, a team of people really interested in reverse engineering and low-level security. Now, for getting banned in games without actually cheating, it's not as easy as one may think. First of all, getting banned can be hard. Modern anti-cheats may detect and prevent ban-worthy behavior. So instead of just letting us run our things which would get us banned, they prevent us from doing so in the first place, just stops the game, and we cannot get banned. Also, another problem is sometimes we just don't know when we got banned. Like games operate with ban waves, so that cheaters usually don't know when they were caught or for what. This, of course, makes also our research harder, right? We cannot easily do a test and know, oh, we got banned because we did that. So as a result, we ended up having a lot of different hardware systems, which by now are banned in a lot of different games. But yeah, it was not one computer, it was an effort of multiple computing devices trying different things at the same time. And the last part is knowing why we are banned. We were like really trying out a lot of different things, and we are not always be sure what exactly was the ban-worthy behavior, so we needed to redo the same tests in isolation. But with all of this in place, let's have a look at the rest of the talk. So we just now had the intro and talked about getting banned, or not getting banned, sorry. We will now talk about not getting banned.
Oh, thanks a lot. So first, some easy things we tried to try and trigger a game ban, which didn't work. So first thing, we download a cheat and try and run it. We used Cheat Engine, we ran our game, we ran this Cheat Engine software which lets you edit memory directly, find player positions, that kind of thing. Against a basic game, this works really well. The games we looked at with anti-cheat just crashed the game. Got kicked out of Valiant. When I log back in, I actually got a penalty for leaving the game early, even though they kicked me. Doesn't work. So how's it detecting these cheat processes? Turns out, a lot of the time, they just look for the name. So you can also get kicked out of a ban by opening Notepad and saving it with the name of a cheat tool. Here, a Windows debugger. That also gets you kicked out of Fortnite. But no ban. To get banned in a game, you've got to go a lot further than this. A little bit of background about Windows security. The games, things like Cheat Engine, run at the user level. Any program can run at this level, but it doesn't have that many abilities. The low-level operating system runs at the kernel level. This code can connect to any process. It can read and write processes. A crash at the kernel level blue screens your machine. And importantly, code running at the kernel level should be signed by Microsoft. So if you want to run kernel level code, you should go to Microsoft, pay them some money, they'll look at your code, sign it, and that gets you into the kernel. So to write our own cheat processes, we tried running user level code, which called kernel functions. And these kernel functions could then interact with the game process and read memory directly. Again, this works really well against any game without anti-cheat. It looks something like this. The first line there opens a process. It asks the kernel, please give me a handle to this process. The read process command will let you read memory directly. Unfortunately, no luck. The game just crashes again. So what's going on is the game companies have gone to Microsoft and got their anti-cheat code signed. So their anti-cheat code is running in the kernel with more privileges than our cheat code, which makes cheating much harder. When any cheat process tries to interact using kernel API calls, the anti-cheat can block it. So there's a lot of past related work in this area. Cheat forums, past talks have looked at how to write cheats, and they found a neat way around this kernel level protection. And that's to use old, out-of-date drivers. So your drivers for any equipment will be signed by Microsoft for low-level hardware operations. However, over the years, Microsoft have accidentally signed quite a few vulnerable drivers. Intel networking drivers, for instance. And there's no easy way to stop these drivers once they're signed. So we get an old driver, we load the old vulnerable driver, and we exploit the vulnerability to map our own code into the kernel. And now we have unsigned code running into the kernel, and we can move our cheat into the kernel. And this is what a lot of actual working cheats do. This is also used by malware now. It's a great malware technique to bypass Windows defenses. So let's see if this gets us banned. We start up the game. We find an old vulnerable Intel driver. We load it. Windows says, OK, it's happy to load it. But when we actually try to use it, it's not loaded. The game anti-cheat running at the kernel level is hooking the DLL load functions to stop us loading vulnerable drivers. The running game may also unload any drivers it sees as vulnerable. So this technique doesn't work on its own. Next, we looked at the hypervisor. We tried virtualizing the entire stack. If the game is running virtualized, we can get above the anti-cheat code. Normally, a debugger would run at the kernel level. We're going to try running it in a hypervisor, which would make it almost invisible to the anti-cheat software. If we got that working, we could do anything we wanted. One problem is we've got driver integrity checks, signature checks to bypass. So we try that same technique of using vulnerable drivers, and we patch the integrity check for the kernel to always return true, which lets us load our hypervisor debugger. Now that's loaded, we can run the game, and our cheat code should be completely invisible to the anti-cheat code. Should work, it doesn't. Easy anti-cheat blue screens our computer, BattlEye blue screens our computer, and so does Vanguard. What these anti-cheats are doing is they're deliberately enforcing some errors and then calling a VM exit. If the code is not running in a VM, nothing happens. If it is running in a VM, that forces a blue screen. So these anti-cheat companies are deliberately blue screening our machines if we try and mess with them. But no ban in sight. The anti-cheat companies think all of these methods are so basic that they don't merit a ban. To get banned, you've got to go a lot further. And for that, I'll hand over to Marius.
Yes. So let's look into a couple of things we tried which actually got us banned. And for this, the important bit is that we custom tailor our methods to the different game and anti-cheats we are targeting, because all of them operate slightly differently. So we will have a small rundown of some, in our opinion, really cool things to get banned without cheating for particular games. So first, let's look into user mode code injection. So similar to cheat tools we saw, which run in the same user mode, or which run in user mode and inject their code into the running game, we found a way to get user mode injection working and also getting us banned from Overwatch 2. So Overwatch 2 was not able to prevent us from injecting code with a little twist. So we want to run some custom code in the target's game process. Normally, what we will do is we would use a load library function, like a Windows API, to load our cheating code, like in this code 1337hex.dll. All anti-cheats really check for this and see, oh no, load library is happening. When the game is already running, a user should not really load additional libraries and modify the memory process of the game. There are also different methods like load library A or create remote thread, these kind of things. All of these, the anti-cheats catch and ruin our day. So what did we do instead? Instead, we avoided the API calls and resorted to a technique which is called manual mapping. This basically boils down to replicating the load library functionality completely ourselves. So we allocate some executable space, we copy the PE sections into the memory, we do a little bit of resolving imports so that it all works and is at the right location, and then we call the entry of the DLL, and optionally then the DLL could hijack the game's thread. And all in all, when we developed this, we were like, okay, we basically just built load library again. It's just not called load library anymore, it's now called our evil loader 1337. And with that, we got banned, our first ban from a game. So Overwatch 2 sent us out this nice email saying that we made an offense of using unauthorized cheat programs or hacks. We did not cheat. We did not use any cheat. We just load our own memory. What is wrong about this? But okay. One important bit here to also consider is that cheats which move to kernel level, anti-cheats which move to kernel level would block this attempt because they run at a higher privilege level. So this is all based on the fact that Overwatch 2 runs their anti-cheat engine in user mode, and we have to try a little harder for games running and anti-cheats running in the kernel. So let's cycle back to the bring your own vulnerable driver kind of attack Tom mentioned a couple of minutes ago. In the case of Rainbow Six Siege and other games, the methodology which is used by malware and which Tom explained would not work, right? We cannot start the game, load the vulnerable driver. The anti-cheat would prevent us from doing so. So let's permutate this operation a little bit. We first load the vulnerable driver. Windows, as before, just says OK. So now we have arbitrary read-write primitives in the kernel, we can write memory, and we can afterwards, we can insert our malicious behavior, our cheat codes. We can unload the driver, then start the game, reload, and yes, the game gets us banned. Instead of preventing this technique, which it's not can, because Rainbow Six Siege is not running at the time we are injecting our vulnerable driver, it will see that something funky happened and it bans us for cheating. So that's our second ban we successfully got. Both of these bans relied on injecting memory to the game process. So let's look at a different type of potential cheating, which we do not, right? We don't cheat, but there are different techniques we can look into.
Cool. So we've looked a bit at sort of injecting memory into user mode and kernel mode, and we're now going to have a little look at more cheat-specific behavior. We're going to start with Apex Legends, and we're going to have a look at some sort of mousy cheats. Aimbots, sort of people might be familiar with these, that they aim for you, they can shoot for you as well. Pixel bots just shoot for you, normally on a color change. So games like Valorant are very polite, and they put this nice red box around enemies. So you see the color red change in your middle central pixel, and you just shoot. And macros, which again shoot for us or can move your mouse for you, normally for things like recoil reduction or shooting quite quickly. So cheats can simulate inputs and mouse movements. So can unusual inputs get us banned? There's a problem with modern keyboards. They're a bit crap. They lack soul. Mine's too small. I don't like it very much. And we really like to compose our movement a bit more tastefully. And therefore, we would like to present Keyboard++. For those of you wondering how this works, like this. This is my live stream from my office.
I should point out, Sam works in a shared office.
Okay, so we log in the next day. We've really pissed off my office mates, and unfortunately we can still play Apex Legends. Terrible news, I hate that game. So we've got to go a bit further. The other problem is, it's quite noisy in there, and I'm having to click quite a lot. And the clicking on my big keyboard is kind of slow. So what I do is I take my software I've written to simulate inputs from the signal from the keyboard, and I update it. So before, I'd have something like this. I click, and that's painfully slow. What I do is I've upgraded it, so if I just hold down one key, it now shoots for me. Fantastic. My office mates' ears are saved, and I can get more frags. So again, log in a few days later, and finally, I can no longer play Apex Legends. So what's happened? It could be that EA hates class. I wouldn't put this past them. Or more likely, we've run into a couple of anti-cheat measures. And there are two likely possibilities here, macro detection or aimbot/pixelbot detection. If we look at these cheats, here are some sort of things they might look for, some checks they might run. And as you can see, we kind of tick a couple of these. We've got third-party software sort of generating synthetic inputs. And at the same time, we've got this sort of inhuman click timing caused by my shoot macro. So terrific. We don't have to play Apex Legends anymore. We can move on to a single-player game.
Okay, so the next thing we wanted to look at was overlays, because a lot of cheats work by printing stuff onto the screen. Classic cheat is a wall hack, which will display the enemy position through a wall. Radars are often common, which will tell you where all the enemy players are in a game. These are kind of the absolute standard cheat, so something we had to look at. So we wanted to see, would using an overlay trigger a cheat? So, additionally as well, there is a problem with most crosshairs. A lot are quite subtle. They're not informative, they're a bit boring. Also, I'm getting a bit older, my attention span wanders, I find it hard to concentrate, so I need a crosshair which will help me play a game. So I present Crosshair++. This keeps my attention. This would absolutely help me play Fortnite. So, here we go. That absolutely makes me a better Fortnite player. Great, I can now continue my Fortnite career. And note the move in hand, but no. Fortnite is not having it. The next day, my account is banned. So, what happened? Maybe Epic just don't like my taste in Crosshair. Unfortunately, it's probably not that. We've triggered some overlay detection. Any anti-cheat is suspicious of any overlay on the machine. And particularly, we found that a no-click overlay, so an overlay which didn't accept mouse clicks and was moving, that's important, was dynamic, that triggered a ban. So the moving is important, and it's also worth noting that overlays for applications like Steam or Discord are whitelisted. So the anti-cheat will actually look at where the overlay is coming from. It's got a list of allowable overlay sources. And if you have something which isn't one of those, that may, in fact, trigger the ban. Of course, what cheaters started doing was injecting their overlay into Steam or Discord and making that display it. So the anti-cheats now integrity check Discord and Steam to make sure those processes haven't been attacked as well. So the anti-cheat, as well as protecting the game, will also protect Discord and make sure that hasn't been hacked. So that provides a lot of protection from overlays.
Okay, there's two silly things over and done with. We're going to move back to to memory injection. Everyone's favorite and least favorite anti-cheat, Valorant and Vanguard. If you haven't noticed so far, APIs suck. Loading a driver normally doesn't work. It's easy to prevent. It's easy to spot. And in the case of Vanguard, that anti-cheat runs from system boot. So we can't just, load a vulnerable driver, inject some code, unload it before the game starts. So we're going to have to go a bit deeper here to get our code into the kernel. There's two ways to do this. First is in the UEFI environment. So we disable secure boot. We run our injector in the UEFI boot environment, write our own code into the boot cycle, and map our mischievous driver here in pink before Vanguard anti-cheat loads. The second way to get code into the kernel without the normal methods is via something called a direct memory access card. This is a separate PCI device, and it circumvents the CPU more or less entirely. It can directly read and write to system memory. It can be disabled by the kernel, and therefore we disguise it as a network card. And then we can stealthily map our code into the kernel once again. Does this work against Vanguard? No. Unfortunately not. What happened? Vanguard hooks into the Windows page fault handler at a very low level. It also kills Microsoft patch guard to do this. Using this trick, they can catch unsigned kernel code as it executes very neatly. Doesn't matter how the code got there, they can still find you. I'm going to pass over to Marius, and we're going to explore how we can stay banned from video games.
Exactly, because by now at this point in stage, okay, we got banned once, but game companies have the tendency to, at some point, a couple of weeks later, if we were only catched once, to release our ban and let us play again. And of course, we cannot have this happen. We want to stay banned. To look into this, let's do a little trip down the memory lane. So let's imagine it's 2015 all over again. Rainbow Six Siege was just released. We found a couple of cheats, got cheated, and we got successfully banned from Rainbow Six. Amazing. Now, if we wanted to continue playing, besides being banned, we can just create a new account and get back to cheating. So it's equivalent to setting up a different head, right? We are now looking different, our account name is different, but it's still us playing. We may get banned again, so we just do it again and again. It doesn't matter, we are wearing different hats all the time. The game back then will just let us play again and again. Now, by now, we do have, or anti-cheat systems do have a solution to this, which are hardware ID bans. So anti-cheats collect a lot of different IDs of your hardware on the computer you're gaming on. And here are just a couple of examples of these, right? There are the serial numbers of the memory, there are the mainboard serials and the IDs, what kind of network interface cards are used, GPUs and their serials, and also what operation system you're running on, like which version, and so on and so forth. These are just some examples. There are a lot of more of different factors anti-cheats may sample to create a hardware ID. And then once they keep, or once they got you caught cheating, they ban the hardware ID, so you can stay banned even if you create a new account, right? The hardware now of the computer is banned from the game. So we started writing a little script to dump on our own hardware IDs. Here in this example, the main board, some UUID of the system and so on. And yes, these are our real hardware IDs. They are already banned in some games. If you take them, go out and get us banned in more games, that would be fantastic. So anyhow, we can just use a simple script, for instance, running from a live CD and just get those hardware IDs against any computer, which would be okay to, let us boot our own system. We could also steal the motherboard packaging after a user has got it. We could trick a victim to execute a script on our behalf. Like, there are multiple ways to get hardware IDs of different people. We will get to that back a little bit later. Just keep in mind, these are really easy to get. Now, the cheat market, of course, also reacted to the fact that there are hardware ID bans. So you can buy hardware ID spoofers on different cheat forums and cheat selling websites. And we see here that a one-day access to such a hardware ID spoofer is already like $5 a day, 7 days, $20. And as said before, we don't want to buy cheats. We even less want to buy hardware spoofing ID. Also, it's a bit boring. It just changes all of it in software. So maybe we can do something different and directly change the IDs of the hardware. Now, there's too much hardware to cover in one talk, so we will focus just on two interesting examples. One are the mainboards or motherboards, because this is a very classic and common way which was used a lot to bypass hardware IDs. And the other one are RAM or memory, because there are interesting new ways to get down to change the serial and IDs of the RAM interface. So I'll head over to Sam, who will talk about motherboard shenanigans.
Okay, so you want to change the hardware ID on your motherboard for one reason or another. There's a few ways to do this, and I'll kind of walk you through my story of trying to do this on various motherboards. First attempt, quite easy. We just take some American Megatrends firmware, we put this on a USB and we boot into an EFI shell, and we can, using this software, quite easily just change your IDs for one power cycle. There's a few problems with this. One, it's volatile. You have to do this every single boot. There's only limited functionality. You've kind of got to do what AMI tells you. You can't change things like your inbuilt MAC address. And finally, it violates secure boot. So games like Valorant, which say you must have secure boot on, this won't work. So moving on, attempt 2. We're going to boot our machine into MS-DOS. If you do know what that is, well done. Using AFU-DOS, which is the American Megatrends DOS utility, we're going to dump the BIOS. We're going to scan through for the serial numbers we want to change. And on some boards, this can include built-in MAC addresses. On most, it doesn't. And then using the same utility, we're going to flash back the edited BIOS. So problem solved. Terrific. It's non-volatile. It bypasses secure boot. Yippee, we can all go home. Unfortunately not. A lot of motherboards now have BIOS write protections. On some, you can roll back your BIOS again and again and again until they didn't have security updates. But for most of them, you're going to get stuck. We're going to have to go a bit lower level. This is where the lab comes in. Attempt number 3. We're going to connect to the onboard SPI chip. So this is the programmable read-only memory. You're going to start by doing this with individual wires before you realize you have a clip. You're then going to put your clip on. Interface from a separate machine, something like a laptop. We're going to use a utility like Flash ROM. Terrific. Dump our BIOS. Edit the IDs. Reflash the BIOS. Terrific. Profit? Unfortunately not. For those of you who are into hardware hacking, you might have run into this very irksome problem before. The SPI chip shares power with the CPU, and this can completely screw with your readings. On small devices like NICs, you're often fine. On a big motherboard, you're not going to get a nice readout. So attempt number 4. Desolder the SPI chip. Take it off entirely and connect it to an adapter. Order an adapter from some weird Chinese website and wait 2 weeks for that to arrive. Flash the edited BIOS. And finally, we can resolder the SPI chip onto the motherboard. I don't know how well I've done there. So, so I think some of you can probably do a much better job than me, but I think that's perfect and it works. And terrific. Before, we have our boring Asus motherboard with a very sort of conspicuous serial number. And now we've changed it. We are inconspicuous, and we have changed our serial number to whatever we like. One thing I'd love to highlight here is that every single one of those 4 methods can work. It depends on your motherboard. The first method, as I said, works for some games. You know, if you have secure bit on, we're going to move forward. If you've got BIOS write protections, we're going to move forward. You can get it done. You just have to take the chips off. So that's motherboards. Terrific. The next one I'm going to move on to is RAM. And this is kind of where being an academic and having a lab comes really handy, because you can steal other people's cool toys. So RAM is traditionally very hard to spoof from hardware. And there's a few reasons. One, there's no nice software tools. There's no BIOS utility, change your RAM serials. At least not that I know of. If there is one, please tell me. There's no SPI interface. They use a different standard. It's called SPD. And these chips are often write protected. So therefore, the adapter setup to sort of overcome this is a bit messy. We've got some soldered wires and a Raspberry Pi Pico. Big thank you to the Bad RAM project at the university for letting me steal their toys. So we connect our DIMM into our DIMM adapter, into a Raspberry Pi Pico. We dump our SPD chip. We can then hex edit our serial values. You can put something funny if you want. You know, I've changed mine to Rito Please. We can then kill write protection on the chip. This is a little bit tricky. And you can learn the hard way, the correct voltage. I'll tell you now, it's 7 volts down a specific pin. And you issue the clear write protection command to the correct address. And we've killed write protection. We can now write our edited SPD dump back to the chip and successfully change our serials. That's motherboards and RAM. We're now going to move on to a really fun bit of the talk, which is how we can get other people banned from games. I would like to describe this as an advanced form of disrespect. It can be used to make any malware much worse, and more importantly, it can make your friends go play outside. It's me again. My bad, I'm still here. Okay, we're going to take a little trip back in time to April 1st, before the Black Hat USA deadline. Me and Marius here are both hard at work. Tom's really busy. We're pretty confused. He's got nothing on. We think he's bullshitting us. Tom is in fact playing Valorant. I peep my head around his office because I have a key. And lo and behold, Tom is in fact playing Valorant. I'm shocked. I'm upset. My supervisor has failed me. And therefore I devise a devious prank to save future PhD students from bad supervision.
Okay, so 1 week later, I come into work, I click on my emails, I click select all, and I click delete, I get a coffee, and I settle down for a morning playing Valorant. And no, I'm banned. This is on a completely clean machine. I've never cheated on this machine. I've never cheated on that account. I keep my password safe. I haven't shared my user account with anyone. But importantly, my bootloader isn't locked, because no one locks their bootloader. So that's the scenario, and I'll hand over to Marius.
So what happened? How did we get Tom banned and having him need to work on the slides with us? Sam went into the office and dumped a live CD run a live CD to then dump out the hardware IDs from Tom's machine. Then, using all of the fancy attacks we saw, he faked Tom's hardware IDs on his machine, used all the techniques we saw to get banned from Valorant, and the next time Tom logs into the game, the anti-cheat sees the same banned hardware IDs and says, oh, it's the same machine, it's a new account, let's ban this account as well. And now Tom has to help us preparing the slides. And it is important to note that this is not it's a fun attack, but it also could make malware way worse.
Yep. So, for example, we have here some of the biggest malware that can steal money from banks.
So the advanced version of the malware will also get you banned at Rainbow Six, making it much more dangerous malware.
We then have Power Ghost mining crypto using the machine.
Power Ghost++ would also get you banned at Valorant. Now, this would clearly free up all the CPU cycles to mine more crypto.
Finally, and worst of all, Stuxnet. Huge attack, disabled nuclear centrifuges.
Stuxnet++ would also get all the nuclear engineers banned at Fortnite, which would have brought the nuclear program to its knees.
So let's just recap what we saw here, game bans as an attack. First of all, we want to note here that this is not a problem for weaker anti-cheats, like Valve anti-cheat, for instance, which do not rely on hardware banning, right? As long as anti-cheats are just doing account-based banning, this attack is not a problem. However, we do believe that getting innocent people banned in games is a real attack that works in practice, right? We saw the example in our office where someone has access to a physical machine, but imagine for also the scenario of streamers on Twitch, which is there's a lot of revenue in that, right? Someone could ship an already pre-banned graphics card to someone and get them banned in their games. And any attempt to mitigate this kind of attack, in our opinion, would make hardware banning much weaker. Like, there's not an easy way to get out of that. So, with all of that, we are arriving towards the end of our talk. Let's just quickly recap what we saw earlier.
So we've had a look at basic techniques, things like cheat engine that you might play around with on Civ 5. These will get you, someone there's played Civ 5. Things that will get you blocked, crash games but not banned. We've looked at mapping code into game processes from user mode and how this will get you banned on Overwatch. We've looked at mapping code into the kernel and how this will get you banned on Rainbow Six Siege and other BattlEye games. We've looked at simulating inputs, getting us banned on easy anti-cheat on Apex Legends, adding video overlays onto our game, again, easy anti-cheat for Fortnite. Fortnite also runs BattlEye. And we've looked at loading our own drivers sneakily and how anti-cheat such as Vanguard can block this. So what are the takeaways and the conclusions of this talk? First, modern anti-cheats shrug off a lot of traditional cheat attempts. Properly getting banned without cheating can be very easy or very hard. Small things can trigger them if they think you're cheating. Big things can also not, all the way up to loading our own hypervisor. Yeah, we'll just crash it, do what you want. Modifying hardware is the sort of king of spoofing. It cannot be detected if done right. And you can also get your friends to go outside. You can ban streamers. I think we should mention our attack. We presented it as I'll take your hardware IDs. You can flip this around to use some software methods to write hardware IDs to other people's machines that are already banned. So you could have a mother banned device and deploy those hardware IDs, or you can collect someone else's hardware IDs, spoof those and get them banned. It works either way. If you're interested in our work, that's a link to our GitHub. We've got our slides from this talk will be up there. The slides from our Black Hat talk, which is a sort of deep dive into some technical stuff. So if you want to know, for example, how Vanguard, their Vanguard page fault hook works, the one that can detect unsigned code in the kernel, that's in that talk, and that'll be up there. So please check that out. Take any questions, any advice, etc. Thank you for coming. Thank you.